Hey, David Brewster here with another episode of Scales and Tales, and this is part two of pentatonic mastery. And as I explained in the first lesson, the pentatonic scale is very popular, very common, very frequently found, in rock and metal and blues and jazz and country and funk and reggae and pretty much any popular style of music. Um, and you can hear it in classical music, but classical music's kind of a completely different animal compared to most, popular music forms. And we can talk about, scales and tonalities that appear in classical music, which I've always found that really fascinating. The chord progressions, the scales, the arpeggios, and the tonalities in classical are very inspiring. But this is more or less, kind of focusing on pentatonics. In the first lesson, I kind of started things in the key of A and just explained a few things. And then we moved to the key of F. We mapped out the fretboard and kind of found all five positions. We also converted those to the blues scale. And we looked at the Bruce Boulez, kind of sequence or exercise, combining two positions of the minor pentatonic at a time and kind of gradually running through, the scale, two shapes at a time. And all of those are really good, things for you to practice if this is new information or if it's a little fuzzy, maybe your knowledge and understanding of these scales and different positions is a little shaky, and that's okay. That's exactly what this lesson and this episode's for. All right, well, the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to move away from the key of F. And I put things in the previous lesson in the key of F just to give us a really nice and clear picture of each shape. And then eventually, when we hit the octave, up on the 13th fret, you could see, how all those different positions, the minor pentatonic, kind of live and where they are on the fretboard. And it gives you a really nice view of the neck. But by moving to a different key now, we're going to test your ability or awareness of where those shapes are. So we're going to basically still refer to, that minor pentatonic box as shape 1. And what we want to do is we're going to move that up a whole step. So we're going to move from F minor to G minor. And the main reason why I selected G minor, I'm still kind of avoiding A simply because it seems like it's always shown in A minor. And I'm trying to, mix things up. So moving it to G minor, the first thing you're going to notice is there's the box, right? But then, by moving that box, to the third fret, now actually what's happened, and part of the reason why I'm talking about this, is moving that box scale, a whole step, or that box fingering a whole step higher, that actually opens up the previous shape, shape number 5 of the minor pentatonic scale. So, just by moving that scale shape up a whole step, if we incorporate some of the open strings, we can actually hit shape 5 of G minor pentatonic. Something like that. So really, I guess the reason I'm explaining this and showing it is, once you learn the minor pentatonic in F, or really in any key, but once you've learned it in F, like in the previous lesson, it's really just a template. It's kind of a series of 5 shapes that, kind of lock or fall on the fretboard. And then depending on what key you're in, those shapes are just going to move around. So, if we put the scale much higher on the fretboard, you would have even more of those scale shapes and positions that kind of appear, below it and above it. And you can see that starting to happen right here, and just moving from F to G, moving that up a whole step. Like I said, it suddenly opened up that open position pattern with open strings. And that's the important thing to kind of get in your head, is as you start moving this around to other keys, those shapes are going to kind of move, and you need to remember, oh yeah, there's shape 1, so there's shape 5, and shape 4, and shape 3, and so on. Now that we've moved to the key of G minor, the first thing we're going to look at here is we're going to basically learn the minor pentatonic on 2 strings. So it's a little different than the sequence idea we had last time for Bruce Boulez. That was using 2 shapes of the minor pentatonic scale. And now we're just going to basically target 2 strings at a time. And I would actually start on the low E string. and just climb up the scale on the low E and A and hit every position on the way up, something like this. And you can descend. And don't really worry about flying through it or, impressing somebody. You're really trying to lock in to those scale shapes and memorize them and remember them. And, um, if some of those fingerings are new and maybe you're just familiar with that standard box fingering, doing this is really going to test your knowledge of these scales, because now you're having to think of not only all 5 positions, but you're also having to cram it on 2 strings, so you're really testing yourself. Now, once you know it on the low E and the A, then just go through the rest of the positions. There's the A and the D, and keep in mind we're staying in the key of G minor here. And then you can do the same thing on the D and the G. The same thing on the G and the B, which this is probably the trickiest one. Mainly because you have to kind of move up, an extra fret along that B string. Like right there, right there. And then finally the B and the high E. So from here, I'm going to reveal something that I call the pentatonic highway. And this actually appears in one of my books, the book Target Tones, which is through Center Stream Publications. I do talk about that briefly in that book. But what we're going to look at here is, a concept that I've kind of nicknamed octave linking. And I have brought this up in another lesson. I think it was a 3-for-all lesson on Late Night Lessons channel. And with octave linking, what we're doing is we're actually thinking of the fretboard and connecting the fretboard across the strings with octaves, and it kind of gives you a really streamlined and easy way to approach the neck. And this is a great way to learn the fretboard as far as, the notes on the fretboard, and really understanding, how to move around the neck. It really kind of gives you a better view of how to, shift positions and change, as you move around the neck. So what we're going to do is we're really just going to target the first 4 notes of the scale, all right? So we're in the key of G minor. So we've got G, B flat, C, D, F, and G. So if we just target the first 4 notes, we're just going to target G, B flat, C, and D. All right, the first 4 notes. And then what we're going to do is jump up an octave, and right there's G, B flat, C, and D. And then if you jump up another octave, there's G, B flat, C, and D again. So you have this little minor third and whole step fingering happening here, where you've got 2 frets and then 1 fret, kind of in between your fingers. And we're just moving that little pattern, across the strings and connecting that shape with octaves. So to kind of locate the pentatonic highway, we're going to use that. And then you want to grab the note F here on the 3rd fret on the D. You want to hit that note and then slide into the G there on the 5th fret, and then continue that pattern like this. And there I basically opted to kind of walk up the scale, shift across the strings. I moved into the 2nd octave, or the next octave. And then after I played it there, I grabbed F again, slid to G. There's that same pattern. And at the very end, I shifted up, grabbed F, and bent that up to the high G way up here. So it's just a kind of almost like little pieces of a puzzle, connecting across the strings and the fretboard. Another really common highway pattern you'll see lots of rock and blues guitarists use is a fingering shape where we're just basically kind of, playing with a whole step pattern right here. And you'll see a lot of guitarists do this, Clapton and Van Halen and a bunch of people. But what we're doing here, we're going to basically go from, F to G and then B flat to C. And then right there, you want to slide with your third finger up to D on the 5th fret. And then do the exact same thing again right there. And then slide that C up to D again. And then you're going to have the start of the pattern right there. Of course, you'll have to make a big jump up to grab that F, if you want to bend up. Or you could, do a hammer-on or a slide. You could tap that note. We're just trying to find a cool way to get from a lower position and kind of, find a way to grab that G some way. And you could hit a harmonic at the end if you wanted to. But the important thing is we're listening and finding, different ways to play that scale. And we're basically trying to find as many different ways of playing it that doesn't involve this, right? Because you'll notice I haven't really talked anything about, playing in the box or from that box fingering. I'm trying to, help you move around the neck and do things that aren't, locked or confined to that one shape. Okay, so here's the big part of this lesson. Here's the big surprise, I guess, or the, the nugget of information you're really going to pick up here. So the minor pentatonic scale is known as a skeleton scale. Okay, in the last lesson I was talking about how it's a 5-note scale. You could also think of it as a 5-note arpeggio. But another way you can view it is it's really just the core, like the important, the most important, chord tones or scale tones that fit a minor key. So when you play a minor pentatonic scale, I mean, you're playing a 5-note scale, or you could think of it as a 5-note arpeggio, but you're basically 2 notes away from playing a full, minor scale. So in the key of G minor, there's the minor pentatonic box. And there, we've got the root, we've got the flat 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the flat 7, and the root again. So if you're familiar with, scale formulas and scales themselves, you'll notice that we're missing 2 notes. We're missing the 2nd and we're missing the 6th. And if we add those notes back into the minor pentatonic scale, we're going to convert it. It's no longer going to be a minor pentatonic because pent means 5, and it's a 5-note scale. If we convert that to, say, the natural minor scale, or Aeolian would be the modal name. If we take the minor pentatonic scale and add, A and E flat, then it's going to change it to a G natural minor, or G Aeolian. And if you look really hard, you can still see the minor pentatonic is still there. It's just... it's just surrounded now by these new notes, the A and the E flat. There's the A that was kind of hiding here. The E flat kind of popped in right there. The A happens again there on the 5th fret on the high E. So those notes, kind of appear, or they, pop up in that minor pentatonic fingering, and then it's converted to that Aeolian, mode or scale. All right, well, that's going to wrap up the second look here at pentatonic mastery. And I definitely want you to take the ideas and concepts that were kind of shared in both of these lessons and practice them. Continue moving that minor pentatonic to other keys. Go to A, go to B, go to C, go to B flat, or wherever you want to move it to. All right, well, leave some comments and some feedback, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more scales and tails and chord play and 3-for-all and other material very soon. Thank you.